Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne Sportsnet production, available on Apple Podcasts and PodcastOne.
Whether you love the action in sports from the NHL, the NBA, and the NFL, or if you're really into movies with Oscars coming up, BetOnline.ag has something for all types of interests. Create a free account on BetOnline.ag and receive a 50% sign-up bonus just by using the promo code PodcastOne. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts and the exclusive partner of PodcastOne Sportsnet.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am currently out on vacation, recharging batteries, but just because I'm recharging the batteries, we still got business to take care of. In the meantime, we'll be playing some of the most requested Steve Austin Show classics that have been locked away in the archives. I got a great one for you this week, and here's my producer, Sean, to tell you all about it.
All right, thanks, Steve, and welcome to another classic episode of the Steve Austin Show. Producer Sean bringing you episode number 31. With none other than the ace man himself, Adam Carolla, a fellow PodcastOne podcaster. This episode's original air date, July 22nd, 2013. Steve and Adam get together to talk about Adam's origin story, how he used boxing to get into radio, as well as talk about Adam's interest in general for boxing. Also, they do a deep dive into improv comedy, because Adam got his start at the Groundlings, learning the craft of comedy there, moved on to getting into radio and everything. So you'll hear some stuff about improv comedy. Steve's very inquisitive about that. Also, talking about football, some funny stories about football and Adam's experience as a high school football player, some race car driving, and some sangria. So there's quite a bit in this episode, so you're gonna dig it. This day in Steve Austin history, January 29th, there was nothing. Steve did not do anything on TV or in a house show this day, as far as I can find, on January 29th. Hopefully we'll have something for you on Thursday. That would be dope. Okay, thanks for listening, folks. Coming back after the break with another classic episode of the Steve Austin Show as Steve sits down with Adam Carolla.
All right, it's the final week of the NFL season, and the biggest game of the year is just days away. It is the Rams versus the Patriots in Atlanta. It is this Sunday. Can Brady do it again? Will the city of Los Angeles bring home the Lombardi Trophy to the youngest coach in NFL? This is going to be a matchup for the ages. As I've been saying for months, there's only one place here at PodcastOne that has all the action you're looking for. BetOnline.ag. Sign up today for a free account on betonline.ag and use the promo code PodcastOne to receive a 50% sign-up bonus. If you've missed out before on jumping in on the NFL odds, well, you only have one game left, and it's the biggest game of the season. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in on the action. Visit betonline.ag today for all the details and use promo code PodcastOne. That's PodcastOne to get a 50% sign-up bonus and get yourself in on the action. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
I got to tell you, Steve, you, for a guy who didn't start out doing this for a living, have slid into it like a well-worn slipper.
You know, it's interesting, though. When I go to your show and watch all the wheels in motion, it's very impressive. And
Thanks.
You come off, because, I mean, there'll be many times when I'll be at the house and I'll hit that damn record button and I'll start hemming and hawing, and then I'll start stuttering and stopping, push the stop button, and, you know, finally my wife will yell at me because it's getting late at night, and she'll say, would you stop hitting the stop button and just let it flow? But when I go to see you in action and hear your show, it's just absolutely seamless. And you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you're one of the original podcast guys, but you got your start in radio, correct?
Yeah, I got my start many years ago training Jimmy Kimmel to box for a boxing match. That my audience knows this story, but your audience probably doesn't know this story and might be interested by this story.
I would love to hear it.
I was working for a place called Bodies in Motion in Pasadena. I was driving a pickup truck, no supercharger. Just a Nissan long bed, standard cab, bench seat, no headrests. The headrest was the rear window. So, and it was a funny car because I lived not too far from here in Hollywood, but Hollywood was pretty dicey in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. It got all rejuvenated down here and gentrified, as we like to call it. But it was pretty dicey back then. And I lived with my girlfriend up on Franklin Street, just about a mile from here, and had to park on the street. Had to park my pickup on the street. We didn't have parking for the for the apartment. There was no garage. And I didn't have insurance because I was poor. I was a carpenter, but I was trying to be a comedian. So between the two, I really didn't have enough for car insurance. So I went down to the Pep Boys, and for $3, I bought a toggle switch, and I put that toggle switch on my fuel pump. And when I would come pulling in, probably about a block, there was always a marker I used because that thing was carbureted and it had a fuel bowl in it. And if I left enough fuel in it, you could start it up and drive it a quarter mile.
Right.
So as I was coming in about a quarter mile away, I'd reach down between my legs in between the bench seat on the floor, and I'd flip this toggle switch, and it would cut the fuel pump, and hopefully it would start bucking just about the time I was pulling in front of the apartment building. That pickup truck got stolen 3 times, and each time it got stolen, I walked and found it. I literally, my biggest... I had to walk out of the apartment when it was stolen, and I lived in another apartment in North Hollywood, and it was stolen as well. I walked out of the apartment, and I had to figure out which way I was pointing. And then I was pointing up Franklin or down Franklin. Oh, I came in, and I would just start walking. And I would start walking about 100 yards. I'd find it just sitting there. And it had, the thing that was crazy, too, is I was worth nothing. I had no possessions to my name. The only thing that was good in my life is that thing was an 84 Nissan pickup, had a Sony digital stereo in it. And that, back when people used to steal, rip off car stereos all the time, that was a digital Sony the guy had put in. And that thing was worth $500, probably more than the truck. And I knew that thing was going to get ripped off in Hollywood, too. So I did what I had to do, which is I put a little piece of tape over the digital readout, and I painted it brown. And everyone says, why'd you spray paint your stereo brown? And I said, so it wouldn't get ripped off. And they said, how's that prevent it from being ripped off? And I said, the people who rip off car stereos aren't audiophiles. They don't go, oh, I want to upgrade my car stereo. They're junkies.
Right.
They're fucking junkies. And they're going to sell it for $40, and they're going to get a hit of crack. If you paint it brown, they can't sell it.
It's not so enticing or appealing.
It's not enticing or appealing. So I painted it brown, and not only would my truck get stolen, I would go find the truck down the street with the stereo still in it. Eventually, because the ignition was a dealer item, I said, screw it, I can't pay for a new ignition. I would start my car with a flathead screwdriver. Had a little Sears Craftsman, the short boy.
Right.
Little stubby one. Just put it in there and just crank that thing right over. And one time, some cops saw me driving around with no ignition in the car.
Oh, no.
And thought, I know, it's all part of my white privilege, thought I'd stolen the car. So they pulled me out of the car, and they said, what's going on? I said, I was the victim of a crime. My car got stolen. I just went and got it. And they said, what do you mean just went and got it? I said, well, I got a fuel cutoff switch here. And they said, why is your stereo brown? And I said, so it wouldn't get stolen. He said, how's that going to be? I said, guys steal it, and then they sell it. And the guy, both cops looked at each other and went, wow. That's the smartest thing I ever seen.
Right.
I'm going to tell everyone back at the precinct, and they just got in the car and left.
Well, that's the last thing you want to do when you get that shiny new stereo is paint it so it looks like shit. But to your point,
I could listen to my tunes.
Yeah.
I was listening to Molly Hatchet, and I had my digital readout. I didn't spray over the digital readout part. I could tell what that was, and other than that, I was just tuning in volume. So I was driving that thing, and I was leaving the gym. And I was driving over the hill, over on this side of the hill to install entertainment unit in someone's house that I'd built for them. I was building cabinets and teaching boxing in the morning. And I heard Jimmy on the radio talking about, he was doing the sports. And he said that Bobby McFerrin broke his leg, the don't worry, be happy guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was unhappy about breaking his leg on a ski slope. And he paused and he said, what's a brother doing skiing? That's the problem. And then the one black dude who worked at the radio station ran in and said, what are you talking about? And he said, black guys shouldn't be skiing. And next thing you know, there was a fight. And they said, settle it in the ring. And then they said, we need trainers, we need equipment, we need everything. And I was driving my truck going, I'm a boxing trainer. I could train one of these dudes. Not Jimmy, just one of them.
Yeah.
And I'll see what the inside of a radio station
You just
looks
look for
like.
the gig.
I just want a gig. I want to see what it looks like inside that station. And I called them, and I called them, and I called them, and I called them again, and they never returned my calls. And eventually I drove down to the radio station and just waited around in the lobby till somebody came down. And that somebody was Jimmy.
Did you guys just hit it off right off the bat?
Right off. We had a perfect symbiotic relationship, which is he didn't want to train, and I didn't want to train him. I wanted to talk comedy, and he wanted to drink Snapples and eat and talk comedy with me.
Right.
So we trained for about 10 minutes, and then I'd go, why don't we go upstairs? There's a sandwich joint. We could have a Snapple and talk strategy. And then I would just talk to him about comedy the whole time. We just sat there and talked comedy.
But how old were you back then?
I was 29, and I'd always promised myself when I turned 30, I'd be doing something. Not something, hosting my own game show, not, writing for the Emmys, just something other than swinging a hammer.
But at that time, swinging a hammer, were you writing comedy for other cats? Were you performing at some of the little clubs?
I was trying to do open mic stuff. There was a place on Ventura Boulevard, it's not there anymore, called the Deli Smoker. I built a house across the street from Jay Leno's house 1 million years ago up in the hills behind us here, and I recognized him. He wasn't doing the Tonight Show.
Right.
And he was just a working comedian, and I told him I recognized him, and I started talking about comedy with him, and I asked him, what should I do? And he said, go down to the Deli Smoker and tell some jokes. And I did, and I sucked, and I hated it.
But what was it about it that got you interested in wanting to do stand-up comic from the get-go? I mean, like when I got into what I did professional wrestling, I was changing channels and came across it on television and fell in love with it. What was it about being a stand-up guy that attracted you to want to do stand-up?
I did an interview earlier today, and I realized when someone said, what made you get into it? I was so miserable in my former life. I said, and I don't know if I would have found my way to it or not, but I said, if my dad owned a successful, unfinished furniture manufacturing plant and had a job opening for me out of high school with an air-conditioned office and told me I could work on a new line of Adirondack chairs and that one day this business would be mine, I'd probably still be sitting in that office. But I was living in an apartment with 3 dudes and no air conditioning and driving around a piece of shit pickup truck that I had to start with a screwdriver, and I was miserable. When
guys like me riding around with other guys in the wrestling business, and all of the guys that I know, the world I come from, are just big comedy fans in general because everybody loves to laugh. But you always hear, man, so many of the comedians are just miserable. They're coming from an unhappy place. Mm. Were you unhappy inside or just unhappy with the situation at hand, living with the 3 dudes in the pickup truck?
No, it was for me, it was a business decision. I was not one of these dudes who was picked on or shunned by the girls or had a big brother that was the star of the football team and I was the black sheep or an alcoholic dad or any of that good stuff. I was a class clown in high school, and I was all Central Valley first team in football, and I got scholarships and stuff to play football and everything. I was popular. I had no problems at all, except for the reading and writing part was a little bit difficult for me. But
why? Why was that difficult?
I never learned to read or write as a kid. I don't have a disability. I'm not dyslexic or anything like that. I never learned. I went to a school for my first several years of my life where we didn't do anything but chuck dirt clods at each other.
Right.
So my arm was good, but I could not, but my pen was bad.
Yeah.
And I never learned to read or write, and then it just kind of became my secret shame, and I sort of hid it after that, and I never really brought it up again, and I just kind of got warehoused.
But then when did you learn how to read and write?
Well, honestly, I learned to really read and write in my 30s.
Unbelievable.
After I got into radio, because I got out of high school where I was just kind of shucking and jiving and, hustling and getting by and bullshitting. And, all I had to do was graduate, and I barely graduated. but I graduated, and then I painted office buildings, I cleaned carpets, I cleaned up trash on construction sites. Eventually, I worked sort of incrementally in that. As soon as I got on the construction site, I was just picking up garbage. You know, I was the first job I had was tearing ivy off the side of a 2-story house in Silver Lake and humping it up the hill to the dumpster and everything. You know, weather like this, ivy filled with rat droppings and dust and all sorts of tampons and shit. You know,
yeah.
And I said, well, this sucks. So my first paycheck, I went out and I bought tool bags. And, you know, nice shiny tool bags and nice shiny hammer and 4-in-1 screwdriver and tape measure and speed square and everything. And I came walking on, and the foreman was like, that's great. Now take them off and get back in the fucking hole. Or if you want to wear them in the hole while you're digging, go ahead. It's going to slow you down a little bit. So I figured out pretty quickly, and he told me I was riding a motorcycle with the tool bags around my neck, by the way. He told me, if you get a truck, I'll give you another $1 an hour. And so I got a pickup truck. And eventually I learned carpentry because I knew, this is the only thing that's going to get me out of this. So I learned how to do that. But as far as the comedy went, I was sitting in my apartment. It was hot and there was nothing to eat and I didn't have any money and I wasn't getting any chicks. And I was like, this sucks. And I started doing the math. Like, you want to own a house? You want to start a family one day? You're going to have kids, insurance. How's anything going to work here on $10 an hour and you don't get paid when it rains? You know, it's never going to work. And I sat there in my apartment. I said, well, you're good with your hands. You're a good builder. And then I said, what else you good at? Like, what else could you get paid at? Well, you're funny. I always knew I was funny. I just didn't know you could get paid to be funny. So I thought, all right, you're funny. Start working that side while you're building. And I was about 22. And I said, you know what? By the time you're 30, you got to be doing something. Take your 20s, learn your craft.
But when did you go to Groundlings?
I went to the Groundlings at probably 23. I found 23, 24. There was a sort of hipster, artsy Jewish chick I knew whose mom was somehow associated with them. And, you know, none of my hillbilly guys from the Valley would know what a groundling was, but she knew. And I said, where do you go? What do you do? And she said, go watch a class, go see a show. And I went and saw a show, and I was like, wow, man, those guys are doing improv, and they're making it up as they go along, and the great talent and all that. And I just went and signed up for a class. Now, you know, I didn't have any money, so it was tough. It was, you know, $350 I didn't have.
But I got to ask you, okay, the guys are doing improv. You can't read or write. You didn't need to. I mean, you've been able to function without reading and writing skills. How did you get through a day without being able to read? I mean, you're damn near 30 and you can't read. I want to go right back to Groundlings, but how do you get by on a day-to-day basis without the reading and writing skills?
Well, I was working with dudes who couldn't read or write from Mexico most days, you know, so they didn't pass a lot of judgment. And we didn't have the word of the day on the construction site.
I could have helped you out back then.
Podcast would have freaked everyone out back then. I got myself involved in a blue-collar world that did not ever involve doing plays, reading scripts, reading out loud passages. I wasn't in any book clubs. I hung around with dudes who just like to get drunk and go to the lake and occasionally fight, and that was it.
But everything is probably, when you had cash, it was just cash transactions, simple stuff. Not a big checking account guy, balancing stuff. I mean, it was bare bones.
And I could... You know, I could read stop signs.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. You know like that son of a bitch means stop.
I did. I learned that symbol meant stop. No, I could read, you know, I could get through things. Yeah. It's not that I couldn't. I really couldn't spell and I couldn't write and I wasn't much of a reader. And that later on when I got into radio, that was trouble.
But, man, I tell you what, you got to go back to this Groundlings things because I read about it. What exactly do they train you there? I get it's improv. Is there a curriculum? Do you get a diploma? How does it work? How long does it last? I mean, I'd be interested in going myself. I'm amazed and, you know, just very interested in comedy, humor, how it works. What do they train you?
Well, it works, you know, the way comedy works is the same way a lot of things work, which is you get good at it. You have but there's also a whole bunch of techniques that if you're good at it, you're doing it and no one's noticing it. And it's like, I do a thing sometimes when we do live shows called What Can't Adam Complain About? And somebody tosses out a topic. And next thing you know, it seems like I just did 15 minutes of fresh comedy on that topic. But if you really dissect it, I probably twisted it around at some point and started talking about something else that seemed connected to it. And it felt like the same thing, but it really wasn't. But it's a sort of sleight of hand. And the thing that the Groundlings will teach you, for instance, they'll teach you a bunch of good rules that not only should be observed at the dinner table, but certainly whenever you're doing what we're doing,
right,
or any form of comedy, which is the first thing they'll teach you is not to negate what someone else is saying. Don't disagree. It's yes and not only that, but. Those are the two rules. So you tell me, have you ever driven to Texas? I wouldn't go, nope. Because now we got nothing. Dead end. We
got shit.
Now, if I say yes, and not only that, but last time I drove to Waco, I picked up a hitchhiker. Guy turned out to be a junkie and stabbed me.
Yeah.
Then you go, that was no hitchhiker.
That was my mother.
That was my mother.
And
you son of a bitch. And now we got a scene.
Right.
But if I said, nope, I don't know what you're talking about, then we don't got a scene.
Yeah.
So if somebody says, don't I know you from high school? You go, yes. And didn't we used to date the same chick? Yes. I got crabs from that chick. Now we got a scene.
Right.
And so what they teach you is never deny. And what they do is they'll do it many different ways. They'll have you enter a scene. And when you enter a scene, you never walk in and just stand there and go, how's it going? They go, a question, don't ask a question, go back, come back in. In which case, you come back in and you go, my God, they're rioting out in the streets. Have you seen what's happening? And then someone will go, well, after that bogus election, what would you expect to happen? And now you have a scene, but you never ask a question. You never just go, how are you? Or how old are you? Like, you know. And they'll do that thing all the time where they'll just yell it from back. So you go, they'll go, well, I don't know. You know him. Oh, yeah, I know you. We used to, he's your brother. You're my brother. That's right. And they start working it into you. They'll do things like this. They'll do little drills like this. Turn the lights off. You start doing some space work. You just get on one knee and you start mussing around with something. And then I'll come walking up to you and go, you want some help starting that campfire? And you'll go, campfire? I'm changing a flat tire. And then someone will yell, no, it's a campfire. I said it was a campfire. I don't care in your mind if you had a lug wrench. In your mind, you got a jack out and a lug wrench. You're doing, but tough shit. I walked over and said campfire. Now you got to go, you know what? You get the marshmallows and let's make the s'mores. That's what they teach you.
And it just keeps going on and on and on. Last time I did your show, I kind of was there. You threw me into the PSA spotlight, which we've ripped off from your show. Give you all the credit in the world. That was a total jack on our part. Me and Mo. It was Mo's idea, but the influence and the idea certainly came from you. But I kind of tuned out there for a little bit during your show, and I was just watching you, man. I mean, you were going to town, and I'm not sitting there blowing smoke up your ass. It's just the way it is. You kept going on and on and on, and I'm thinking to myself, he's fixing to pay this summit off. And you kept going. I said, no, he's going to pay it off now. And you kept going on about another 6 steps, and you finally hit the punchline I was looking for 8 steps ago. So it's obviously something you've mastered to a very high degree. But does it fuck with you thinking? I mean, do you overthink things sometimes too much? Or are you able to just look at a situation, get the bare bones 411 about it? Does it fuck your head up, Ben, with, all the levels available to you? Can you turn it on? Can you turn it off?
No, I learned, it's interesting because I learned I have something called hypervigilance, which is I notice things all the time. Any kind of movement, people ask me, why do you close your eyes when you're talking sometimes? And I go, because if I open my eyes, someone will walk by and pull my focus, and it'll draw me in.
Right.
So I notice stuff moving around peripherally, and I can see it. Part of it is literally, it's a vision, it's a hearing, it's a sensory thing. So it's hard to shut that down. As a matter of fact, I never knew it. Now I sleep with eye shade. I put a padded eye shade on. I put earplugs in, and I get drunk. Otherwise, I don't go to bed because I'm too alert. And yes, I notice weird little things all the time but that's my job, that other people don't notice. But no, it's hard to shut off, and I don't mind it because I'm living in it, but it'll drive my wife nuts.
Alexa isn't the only one with breaking news. Make sure to hang around at the end of this podcast for the latest breaking headlines on the AP News Minute.
The biggest Sunday of the year is finally here as the Los Angeles Rams go head-to-head with the New England Patriots in Atlanta. And PodcastOne Sportsnet has got your game day coverage. Tune into The Rich Eisen Show and The Dan Patrick Show for your daily game day analysis from the most iconic sportscasters around. As RJ Bell of RJ Bell's Dream Preview and Shaq from The Big Podcast come at you live on the ground for the best game day coverage available. No matter which team you're rooting for, download these shows and more each week on PodcastOne Sportsnet or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
In the world that I came from, man, it was testosterone, adrenaline, and you fed off the energy of that crowd. When you go out and your goal is to entertain people and to make them laugh and to inform them, is it adrenaline for you? Are you nervous? What's going on stage like for you now?
No, I don't have any of that. I honestly don't, and I don't know why. I mean, because I've done a lot of it, I guess. But I really don't have that. You know, I have a certain feeling of like obligation, which is these people paid money, they drove, and I don't want to disappoint them. Like, I don't want anybody heading back to the car, talking to their wife, going, I like the podcast, but geez, in person, not so much, you know, or as a comedian or whatever it is, you know. So I have this unyielding desire not to disappoint. I don't have the butterflies and the adrenaline and all that stuff going into it.
But then you go out, say, you know, this is a stand-up gig. This is not the podcast. You're performing. Man, the crowd just ain't getting it. They're not digging it. Something's off.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? I mean,
it's you know, that's really when repetition comes to play. You know, that's when, you know, you're basically a fighter's been hit way too many times, and all that you're relying on now is all that time you spent in the gym, all the repetition, you know, where you're not going to let somebody knock you off your game because you've been practicing your game and honing your game and working your game for so many years that even though it's great when the audience gets behind you and you feel that surge and that energy and it lifts you to another level, your range shouldn't be between sucks ass and great. Your range should be between decent and great.
Right.
Not every night's going to be a banner night. Not every night's going to be fireworks and a 10, but you shouldn't be able to let an audience dictate whether you're going to have a bad night or not, you know, whether you play the trumpet, sing, or tell jokes.
But if they're not digging it, I mean, can you shift gears, go to a different routine, change the material, maybe go to some blues stuff? Do you shift gears? I mean, you're tuned into that crowd.
There's an element of trying to ramp it up a little and compensate and try to bring them back into the tent a little bit. But for the most part, you know, it's just about executing. Like, you sort of know you have a game plan, you execute it well, you're going to win this game. So instead of trying for the deep ball on every play, just do a better job of executing what your game plan is.
You see, you were talking about, you know, going back to kind of the days of a fighter and, you know, and reading about you and then trying to get the boxing lessons to get the radio gig. How much did you box? How far along were you in your training? Were you accomplished? Were you Golden Gloves? Were you fighting a lot? I
was Golden Gloves, but I wasn't that good. I did the Golden Gloves a couple of years in 84, 85, and then I fought some amateur fights. But I knew I was never going to be a professional. I was good at it, but I also knew I didn't want to take that kind of punishment. You know, like I wasn't. I just knew there's no way I'm going to do this and make money at it. I'll do it as a hobby. I'll do it as a sport, but I'm never going to.
What got you into boxing?
I played football. I liked football. I always liked boxing for some reason. And when I stopped playing football, I wanted to do something that was sort of physical and that had some of the same components that football had to it. And boxing was just something I was naturally attracted to, though it wasn't that prevalent back then. There weren't gyms everywhere. I had to go to downtown L.A. and find a
How long did it take you to bring yourself up to speed? Because, man, coming from my background of pro wrestling, I just throw a big right hand from way back, and, that is not conducive to being a great boxing punch. So in training for a couple of my movies, I took a few boxing courses. Footwork is terrible. My jab wouldn't bust an egg. Mm-hmm. It was just absolutely rotten all the way around. It's a whole different animal.
Yeah, it is, and it's about, boxing is sort of about, like all sports, it's kind of about humbling yourself. Like, what you need to do in boxing, which most people don't ever do, is you should probably spend the first 3 to 5 rounds just in front of the mirror. Just shadow boxing. Just watching your
I always
form.
felt like an idiot doing the shadow boxing.
Just watching.
Idiot. Yeah.
And then the next thing you should do is take whatever your bad hand is and throw 3/4 of the punches with your bad hand. And if there's a punch that you're not particularly good at, that means you have to do that twice as much. And then things like skipping rope. People don't do it well. They're not good at it. They don't want to be seen not being good at it, so they leave it alone. And the next thing you know, I know guys, they say they've been boxing for 14 years. They can't skip a goddamn rope.
Right.
Because they got away from it. So really what you need to do is don't just lace it up and go beat the crap out of a heavy bag or jump into the ring and start sparring, but start really focusing on the technique of it and the subtleties of it, and cement that muscle memory and that technique in and the rhythm of doing something like jumping rope. And if you're not good at jumping rope, that means you should be doing more ropes, not less.
You're still in shape. You still boxing?
No, I don't hit other people. I train people a little bit on occasion.
But you're still putting the gloves on and using the heavy bag or something like that?
Yeah, I'll do my knuckles. As you can see, I got a bad. I can't get my wedding ring off. It's trouble when in bachelor parties. But my knuckles screwed up,
right?
And then I had this set of surgery on my left hand. So I had some nerve damage and stuff from that was from holding. That was from training guys holding the thing. So my hands are bad or screwy or something. But what I do is I skip rope and I do a lot of shadow boxing. I just stand there. And by the way, if you want to know if someone can box, watch them shadow box for between 4 and 7 seconds, and that's all you need to know. The fakest part of every boxing movie is when the guy enters the ring doing the shadow boxing, looking like an asswipe.
So you're walking down the sidewalk in Los Angeles, California. Some cat gives you a little bit of a hard time. It comes down to protecting yourself or going on the offensive. You gonna be able to handle yourself?
Yeah, I've been in a couple, scraps. I've never, thank God. I mean, I've had bad things happen to me, but I've never really gotten beaten up. I mean, I got beaten up by a group of guys, but that was unfair. One-on-one, we were fine. It's just when they band together. They did not honor our agreement to stay out of the way and let me beat one of them up. And then they all jumped on me. But they still didn't really. They just broke my lip a little bit. But no, I've been in a couple and I've never had any problems. But that's just because that's what I did. That's what I did for a living. It's just train, focus gloves, boxing, moving, sparring. That's all I ever did. So, I always found in the street, the first thing you could do was just ignore the guy's front arm. His left arm, don't even worry about it. Didn't even exist. Whatever he was going to do with it, you didn't have to focus on it. You just focus on his right arm, and the right arm would be coming wide,
right,
real wide, and there'd be plenty of time and space to get out of the way of that right arm. It's the guys who punch straight, and the guys who punch straight with the front arm. Those are the guys you got to worry about.
Right.
Those are the guys who box.
To shift gears, you grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
I drive around in Los Angeles, and I drive by Venice High all the time. I live down that neck of the woods. And, man, I see some of these kids, and these schools out here scare the shit out of me. You got kids in school, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they at school age yet?
Yeah. Twins, 7. Yeah.
Is it safe for these kids out here to be in these schools? I mean, because I grew up in a little town of 5,000 people, graduated with 110 cats. And, when I come out here, this is a damn animal.
Well, I worry. I want my kids to have grit. I want to be a little bit tough. And this schools, with the peanut allergies and I was talking to my son, and he said, what'd you do today? Oh, we had a walking recess. I said, walking recess? What for? Well, if it gets above, 88 degrees, they have a walking recess. But don't worry, he spent a lot of time in the cool zone.
Yeah.
And I said, you got to be shitting me. Recess, you run. I don't know if it's hot, you drink out of the hose,
right.
Well, everything's about hydration and not exerting. They had some sort of they're raising money. Oh, they're raising awareness and money for like physical fitness. So they're having a walkathon. And when you're 7, walking doesn't mean shit.
No.
That doesn't even do anything. You may as well be in a golf cart, and they're walking in a circle, and every once in a while a kid would start jogging, and the coach would be like, hey, over there, keep it safe. Keep it safe. They're on grass, and they're walking. It drives me insane.
In a couple of years, that kid's going to be in high school. You going to let him play football?
I would. He's gonna be too big a puss, but I'll tell you what it is. I've said this many times because I started playing when I was 7 and went through 1 year of junior college, and then that was it for me. But I said that, and I've been concussed. I've been knocked out of who knows. You don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But
right.
I mean is I've been knocked out maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times, and I've said all the time. You get injured, and you don't want your kid to get injured. But I say, dislocated finger, that lasts 3 weeks. Being a pussy, that's a lifetime sentence.
Right.
And I want my kid to be tough. And football made me tough. There was no fucking around. They didn't give us water. They did drills. They did bull in the ring. You got in the middle. The team got around you. The one guy's got one shot to blast you out of that ring. If you were playing middle linebacker and the hole opened up and you didn't step up and take on the fullback and block and clog that hole, the coach is grabbing you by the face mask and yelling at you and telling you to sit on the bench, calling you a pussy. I used to love this one. And they'd never do this to kids today. They'd line everyone up at the sled, the blocking sled,
mm-hmm.
And they'd line you up and they'd say, all right, everyone's on defense, get in your stance. And everyone's getting the stance. And the guy'd have the football out on the stick, and he'd go, all right, now watch the ball. You don't move unless the ball moves. And then he'd go, sit, hut. And some guy would lurch forward and he'd go, you're all running a lap now. You can thank Higginstaller. And everybody like, fuck you, Higginstaller. Take a lap. And by the way, Higginstaller, you jump again, we'll all do another lap. Why we got to do a lap? Good. You're a team. That's why. When one guy fucks up, you all run. So everyone start running. And while you're running, make sure and thank Higginstaller. And that was it. Well, he learned, didn't he?
Did he learn?
He learned.
Adam, we're talking about football, we're talking about boxing, talking about going to school here in Los Angeles, California, but I'm still intrigued with your intelligence. Didn't learn how to read or write until you was about 30. You kind of did a year of junior college or college?
Junior college. I got some scholarships to play football at, little schools.
Well, dude, what'd you weigh when you were in high school? Because you sound like you was a pretty good lineman.
I was like 210, 215.
That's big in high school.
I bulked myself up,
But back in the day, that's a big cat.
Yeah, no, it was good enough to get, let's see, Marshall. Marshall was the only good school. And it was like UC Davis, Cal Poly Pomona, and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And
what kind of 40 did you have?
Oh man, I did a 4.9 on a good day. I was quick. I wasn't fast. I had no foot speed. I was good in the first 3-4 steps. And then I had good technique because I'd been playing since I was 7, So
Yeah.
I was okay, but it was clear I was overachieving. Like in high school, got All Valley in offense, and then I led the team in tackles on defense. So I was a pretty good player, but then that was it. Once I got to junior college, and those guys were some pretty good athletes, especially out in this neck of the woods. And I was like, forget it.
Well, you had to be like the best cat on the team then, right? Team leader?
Oh, I was, yeah, in high school.
Yeah.
But then when I got to junior college, it was like, screw this. I knew I couldn't get past I couldn't get to that next level.
Here's what happened to me. I was in high school. I was a running back and linebacker. And, down in South Texas, I was pretty good. Now, had I been in Houston, Texas, or out here, probably wouldn't have been worth the shit, but I got a scholarship to junior college. Well, Mr. Big Shot, I think I'm, 1A material. I remember telling my mom's friend, oh, Evelyn, don't worry about it. I'll just go to junior college, make All-American in a couple of years, and go to a big school.
Right.
There's some football playing motherfuckers in junior college. Some of them are dumber than shit. Some of them dyslexic, just crazier than a shithouse rat. But there's some football playing some bitches in JC.
I'll tell you this right now. First off, football players are notoriously dumb, so they all go to junior college. After a lot of them go straight to junior college. But if you want to know what it's like, what the competition could be like, I always laughed about this. At Santa Monica Junior College, at the same time, Steve Smith from the Carolina Panthers, all-pro wideout, and Chad Ochocinco or Chad Johnson or whatever, all-pro, they played at the same time. And I always knew there had to be a third wide receiver on that team whose dad was pissed as shit going, you were all state and you can't crack the starting lineup at a goddamn junior college?
Yeah.
How are you getting to Nebraska if you can't even play at the local junior college? Well, you got 2 guys playing at the same time on the same team that are going to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
That's how good it can get if you're unlucky enough to be there at the same time. And, like I said, at the time, there had to be a guy who was third string who was easily the best player on his team going, what the fuck? I can't crack this lineup at junior college.
So then what'd you say? Did you just get a gut full of football and quit school?
I remember thinking the talent level was a lot higher than I thought.
Yep.
Thought so. And I moved to outside linebacker. And I had a coach who, if he got pissed off at you, he'd throw his dip at you. So you could tell him arguing. He'd start arguing with people, and then he'd start getting pissed off, and you see him reaching for his mouth. It was like an Old West gunslinger undoing his holster strap, real slowly. His hand would start dying down. He'd just be Higginstaller, goddammit, you got to stay in the A-gap. And then you'd see that his hand would start reaching up. And like if Higginstaller said, I'm sorry, I won't have it again, because his hand would come back down again. But if he was like, are you kidding? Kowalski was his hand would still come back up again.
Are you still friends with Higginstaller? He sounds like the team cuffed up.
No, I'll never forget Higginstaller because he was one of these guys who, when I played for the East Valley Trojans, even when we were 7 years old, and the East Valley Trojans, he was like some Ukrainian kid with a huge forehead and a lot of eyebrows. A guy looks like a 55-year-old trucker when he's 7. You know those dudes, those babies, where you just look at them and go, holy shit, man. You weren't cute a day in your life. And he played nose tackle because he was built like that at 7, But he couldn't stay in his stance. Because as a kid, you want to stand up at nose tackle because there's the quarterbacks right there and go, hey, what's going on? And all I remember from, my first years of Pop Warner is having the coaches, Higginstaller, get in your stance! Higginstaller, in your stance! That's all they would yell as he would creep. He'd stand up again.
Was he dumber than shit
Yeah,
or
he was
what?
dumber than shit. I didn't even know his first name. Probably like Igor or something. I mean, like Higginstaller was, we didn't even know anyone's, that's the whole thing. Like, I'm coaching my son's basketball team, and I'm like, what do they call you? My son's like, what do you mean what do they call you? Adam. I go, Adam? I didn't know the first name kids were on my Pop Warner football team. I know Higgins-Staller's first name. We know anyone's first name. And the coach was their last name and Mr.
Yeah.
And that's the way it worked, or coach. But that was playing fast and loose. It was Mr. Fitzgerald, Mr. Napier. I knew them all, but it was Mr. I don't know any of their first names.
But did you cash in your chips? You say, hey, I'm quitting college now?
Yeah, I had a horrible experience where I went to the guy who threw the tobacco at people, and it was a linebackers coach. The head coach didn't throw the tobacco, but the linebackers coach did. And he just said, you're a fool. You're an idiot because you'll be starting next year. And I just remember thinking, even if I start next year, because I was behind a guy who was really good, I just said, but then what? Where's this going? I knew it wasn't going anywhere. So it was tough.
Hard to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was hot. It's, the kind of weather we have out here is out in same in Texas, and it's out in the valley, and you're doing 2-a-days. I had a guy trip on me once because we're doing 2-a-days, and he was a big dude, and he was standing on the sideline, and I took a knee to get in his shadow. I literally slid up
That's what it's hot.
to get in his shadow, and he took a step backwards. He stepped on me and fell over, and he said, "What the fuck are you doing?" I thought it was like I was trying to put my head up his ass. And I said, "I'm just trying to get out of the sun, man. My helmet's on fire."
So you're out of school? You quit college?
I quit, and I got a job cleaning carpets, and then.
But check it out. You get a job cleaning carpets. You was in college for a year and a half at the most?
Maybe 7 months or something.
All right, dude, but I see you work, and again, all this intelligence you didn't read.
No.
What do you do to get so damn smart? You had to absorb a shit pile of information. This source of information is coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I listened. I got myself a job doing construction, and I would bring my little talk radio with me, and that was my only companion. And I'd put my talk radio on, and I would just listen, and I would listen. And I always listen to talk radio. I always listen to when people spoke. And everything I absorbed, I did it audibly. I never read anything and absorbed it. I would just listen. And if you gave me a textbook, I couldn't complete the test. But if the professor lectured on it, then I could. So that's just how I was. But also I had some kind of intelligence that was transcended, my ability just a little bit, because like when I was in high school, I never took algebra. I just took math. It was just called math. Everyone else took algebra starting about 8th grade, and then they'd get on to, trigonometry and calculus and all this kind of stuff. And I just took math straight on through. I just took the Dumbo classes. And then when I went to junior college, they gave you an entrance exam. And they had to be scored on English and on science and on math, and they put me in advanced algebra. And I said, what am I doing? Why am I in advanced algebra? I never took an algebra class. I said, you scored in the top 5% in algebra. Right. I never even took it before. So I had a good math mind, and I had a good mind that absorbed information. I just couldn't read or write, and that's why I started cleaning up trash on construction sites. And I had a family that was sort of, downtrodden and not very supportive. And then, just sort of do your own thing, just as long as you do it outside the house, and once you're 19, see if you can stay outside and not come back. Yeah. And that's what I did. And then I hung around with a lot of meatheads. And those guys, they don't go, hey, man, you should be doing a podcast.
Right.
They just go, hey, man, we're going down to the river. You want to get some Pabst Tall Boys? And that was my life.
Well, you're a busy dude. You do your podcast, and you guys run that thing 5 days a week.
Yep.
You got your movie stuff that you pursue. What do you like to do to unwind, or what are your hobbies?
Well, I do a lot of vintage car racing. So I like getting the old cars. I like wrenching on the old cars and getting them ready and then going out and racing them.
Now, when I went to your studio, man, it's like the ultimate man cave. If you can ever get a chance to go check out Adam's place, go check it out. But you've got...
Actually, stay home.
Well, okay, stay home, and I'll tell you about it.
Yeah.
But there's 4 or 5 old Paul Newman race cars in there, correct?
Yeah.
Now, how long have you had those? Where did you find those?
They're just around the country, and they're all different places. He's from Connecticut. His hometown was his home track was Lime Rock. He drove there a lot, but he drove all over the country. And some of the cars he owned, but most of the cars his team owned, or whoever he was driving for. So it wasn't his car per se. So people think, oh, you buy a Paul Newman car, you have to buy it from the Paul Newman estate, or Joanne Woodward or something like that. No, you don't. Someone else owns that car.
Yeah, I understand that.
And those guys, they just pop up periodically, and they're just sort of around. And then once you get on this sort of short list of guys who know guys, then when something comes up, they go, well, why don't you call Adam? Because he's the guy who buys the Paul Newman cars.
Right.
And I just was a fan of the guy as a performer, as an actor, but certainly as a racer, winning many championships driving these cars. So I thought, it'd be a nice tribute to him and a fun hobby for me to get these things, put them back together, make sure they were in operating condition, and then go out and campaign them.
Now, how are you mechanically? You got pretty good skills? You can tear down a motor, put it all together, or do you just do the basic nuts and bolts stuff?
I'm mostly a builder, like a home builder, and I'm pretty good at doing the wrenching, but I just don't have the time and or, the skills to, machine things and, do all that. So I'll farm the stuff out. Like we took one of my cars to Fontana about 3 weeks ago, and that's a big oval. And you go out you go into the infield and race a course, but then you go back onto the big straight and back onto the big bank.
Right.
And so gears need to change in a car like that because you can't run the same gears you run at Laguna Seca because that's a much shorter track.
Right.
And it's got a 2 mile straightaway, it's 1.5 miles. So you're going to be topped out. So, I got enough to drop the rear end and put in the new rear end and get the 488 out of there and put the 438 in there, 433 or whatever the hell I put in there. So it's like that kind of stuff. But I'm not busting the ring and pinion out. I'm pulling the whole pumpkin out, dropping it down. It's independent in the rear and just bolting the new one back up.
So racing vintage cars, what else?
For me, I'm so busy that just not being busy is its own hobby. So spending time with my family, spending time with my kids, being around my friends, going out on a Saturday night, just getting a meal. And being in town. Oh, I was reminded of what I like to do during one of my pastimes. Not driving, but hanging, which is drinking my sangria. That's my signature beverage. I think you may have seen that over the
Seen it. I tried some of it. How in the hell did you come up with the ingredients for those? Because I went over there. I was trying to be a professional on your show, represent and do the best I could. And they said, hey, man, how about some sangria? Shit, about a cup and a half later, I got a pretty good buzz going.
Yeah, that seems
What
to be
is the proof of that?
It's 21%.
So it's about, 45 proof?
No, it's 21% alcohol.
21.
Yeah, so it's about that, right.
So how did you come up with the ingredients for this mix?
This was me sitting around, pouring red wine in my house, realizing there was just a half a glass left, not wanting to go down to the liquor store, wanting to catch a little buzz. So I went down to the liquor cabinet, and I pulled a little vodka out, and I dumped a little in, and I tasted it, and it tasted like ass. So I put a little bit of orange juice in, and I mixed some ice in, I stirred it up, and I tasted it. And I said, I think I just invented something called sangria. And then I laughed about it for about a year because I'm a shitty businessman. And I brought the jars over to Kimmel's house on 4th of July. I got sangria, everybody. I made it up in my kitchen, I was dumping it out and having everyone taste it, and everyone liked it. At some point, some guy in Napa said, I can make it. And I said, you can? He said, shit, yeah, tell me what's in it. I'll make it for you. And I told him what was in it, and we went back and forth a little, and he said, now you got to design a label, and let's start shipping it. And we shipped, 125,000 bottles in just about 7-8 months.
That is unbelievable. You can hook me up with a bottle, right?
Oh, yeah.
But how can normal people get it?
You can go to CarollaDrinks.com, and it'll tell you either how to get it online or where there's a place that sells it near you.
Now, how's that whole process been? I mean, you're not a liquor salesman. You're a comedian and a host and everything else that you do. How has that business been for you to navigate?
It's a new business, and it's exciting, but it is a business in a very pure form. I mean, it is distribution and sales and getting your team and getting it out there and getting the brand out there. So everywhere I go, when I do a show, we do a sangria tasting as well. So we sort of piggyback them on to doing the show. So that afternoon, I'm at a liquor store signing bottles and taking pictures, and then that night, I'll be on stage.
Well, you get all juiced up on sangria before you go on stage?
It's happened.
Every car comes with its share of stories. That ding in your bumper when you nervously picked up a first date, or the mileage you save by riding your bike all summer. While you can't put a price tag on your stories, now with TrueCar, you can at least find out what your car is worth when it's time to sell or trade it in. Just go to TrueCar, simply enter your license plate number and watch your car's details pop up. Then just answer a few questions. Navigation, moonroof, high mileage. Now you know how much it's going to cost you so you can plan ahead. Once you're finished, you'll get a true cash offer sent in minutes, which you can take to a local certified dealer to cash out or trade in. So when you're ready to experience a better way to sell or trade in your car, check out TrueCar today. True cash offer not available in all areas. You're also going to need car insurance for that vehicle. Go to geico.com and in 15 minutes you can be saving 15% or more on car insurance. That's right. Save hundreds of dollars on car insurance at geico.com. Extra money in your pocket? It may just be the most rewarding thing you do today. All right, I'm giving Sean a go-home cue, so let's wrap it up for this week. Make sure you check out PodcastOne.com and subscribe to The Steve Austin Show so you don't miss any of these classic episodes. Before I ride off in the sunset, I do want to throw out a couple of plugs. I still got a beer. It's the Badass Broken Skull IPA, the finest IPA in the United States of America, and that's the bottom line. Made by El Segundo Brewing Company. You can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in Cali. If you ain't in Cali, you're probably SOL. And if you're looking to get a badass pocket knife, I got two for you. Cold Steel Broken Skull Knife, Cold Steel Working Man Knife. Get them at my Amazon store. Amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin, or go to the Cold Steel Knives website and check out all their badass knives. Also, one more big shout out to all my sponsors to make this show possible. That's how I'm able to bring this show to you free twice a week. Please support them because they support us. For more info, check out the podcast description to this episode for details. Folks, I am on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Steve Austin BSR. Folks, I'll be back soon, but until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.